I always tell people, the danger in getting old is not just in your body slowing down. It is in how other people start talking around you instead of to you. They do it gentle at first. Little jokes, little comments. Then one night, you realize they are planning your life without you in the room, even when you are standing right there. That night, my throat woke me up before my mind did. Dry, scratchy, the way it gets when I forget to put the humidifier on. I reached over, felt the empty glass on my nightstand, and decided to get some water. The red numbers on the clock said 1:27 a.m. My knees complained when I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I sat for a second, waiting for the usual dizziness to pass. Renee's side of the bed was empty. Her pillow was cool when I touched it. I thought maybe she was in the bathroom. The house was quiet, that deep kind of quiet you only get in the middle of the night. No cars passing, no television, no neighbors talking on porches. Just the faint hum of the fridge. I took my cane, more for balance than anything, and eased my way down the hall. When I reached the top of the stairs, I heard voices. Low, close together. I stopped. Not because I wanted to eavesdrop, but because at my age you learn to move slowly when you cannot see where your feet are going. Then I heard my name. Daddy can't stay here forever, Mom, Derek said. His voice was tight, like he did not want to be having the conversation but was forcing himself through it. We need to think long-term. My hand tightened on the railing. I stayed where I was, half hidden in the dark at the top of the stairs. Renee answered, her voice softer, careful. I know, baby. I do. The doctor said his memory is still okay, but look at him. The falls, the blood pressure. We have to think about assisted living. Somewhere safe. With nurses. There was a pause. I could see them in my mind at the dining table. Renee in her housecoat, Derek still in his work clothes, both of them looking at paperwork spread between them. Then Derek said, the house won't keep its value forever. The market is good now. If we move him while he's still, capable, we can sell and pay off some things. Maybe get ahead for once. The word sell hit my chest harder than any blood pressure spike. Renee lowered her voice even more. We just have to do it right. The bank already said with his name on everything, we need certain documents. Power of attorney. Signatures. Once that's in place, it'll be easier. I did not move. I did not cough. I did not call out their names. I stood there in the dark, listening to my wife and my only son talk about my house, my future, and my mind as if I was already gone. People think betrayal hits all at once, like getting struck by lightning. But the truth is, it starts long before the moment you finally notice it. It starts in the routines, the habits, the quiet ways you trust people without thinking twice. And I trusted my family. I trusted them so much I never imagined I'd need to listen for danger inside my own home. The next morning, I got out of bed like nothing had happened. My body moved slow, but that was normal now. I made my way to the kitchen, taking my time on the stairs, feeling the ache in my knees settle into the rhythm of each step. It was a familiar pain, the kind that came with age, not with weakness. Renee was already up. She had on one of her clean-pressed blouses, the light blue one she wore whenever she wanted to look put together. She stood by the stove, stirring oatmeal like it was any other Monday. "Morning, Henry," she said without turning around. "Morning," I answered. My voice was steady. I kept my eyes on the coffee pot instead of her face. She slid a bowl toward me. "Steel-cut oats. Good for your heart." It sounded caring. It even looked caring. But after hearing her talk the night before, something in her tone felt different. Or maybe I was the one who felt different now. I sat down, took a spoonful, and kept quiet. When Derek stopped by later, he acted the same way he always did, giving me a half hug, patting my shoulder a little too firmly, talking to me in that loud, cheerful voice younger folks use when they think they're helping an old man hear better. "How are you doing today, Dad?" he asked, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge like it was his own house. "I'm all right." He nodded, but his eyes cut toward Renee for half a second. A quick look. The kind you only catch if you've spent decades reading people's expressions the way bus drivers have to. Need anything from the store? Derek asked. I can run out later. I'm fine, I said. He didn't believe me. Or maybe he didn't care. Hard to tell the difference when someone has already decided you're slipping. After he left, I went about my day the way I always had. I checked the mailbox, waved at Mrs. Patterson across the street as she watered her roses, then walked down to the corner. My doctor told me light walking helps keep me steady, so I tried to get outside every day. Folks in the neighborhood called out to me, and I answered back with small jokes. I'd lived there over 40 years, long enough that even the cracks in the sidewalk felt familiar. Around noon, I went inside, turned on the old radio in the living room, and sat in my recliner. The cushion had molded itself to my shape after so many years. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the music fill the room. That was my peace, those quiet hours when the world slowed down enough for me to think. Growing up, Derek used to climb into that same chair with me after school. He'd sit on my lap, show me his drawings, and tell me about his day. When his mother, my first wife, passed away, that chair became his safe place. We would sit together in silence until he found words again. I thought about those days a lot now. Maybe because they reminded me of a time when love didn't have paperwork attached to it. In the afternoon, Renee came in holding a stack of envelopes. Bills, mostly, she said, tossing them on the counter. I'll go through them later. I reached for the stack, but she slid it away with a smile that looked polite but felt firm. It's all right, Henry. I've got it. She'd been saying that more often lately, I've got it. It used to feel helpful. Now it felt like a hand closing over something that used to belong to me. Later that day, she drove us to my doctor's appointment. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the houses roll by. I liked that drive, the sunlight on the sidewalks, the kids riding bikes, the mail trucks rumbling past. It reminded me that the world was still moving, even if parts of my life felt stuck. At the clinic, the nurse called my name. Mr. Cole? This way. I got up, but Renee walked ahead of me, answering questions before I could open my mouth. Yes, he's been more tired lately. Yes, sometimes he forgets things. Yes, he needs more help around the house. I didn't like the way she said it. Like she was explaining a slow decline she had already decided was happening. The doctor, an older man with glasses too big for his face, turned to me. Is that true, Henry? I get tired, I said. But I'm all right. Renee shook her head softly behind the doctor, like she was trying to communicate something without words. At that moment, I realized how easy it would be for two people, especially family, to create a story about me. A story where I was fragile, confused, unreliable. And once people start believing that story, it becomes their truth. On the way home, Renee talked about groceries and church and weekend plans. All normal conversation. Nothing sharp. Nothing suspicious. But something had shifted. I could feel it like the faint pressure before a storm. Not loud, not immediate, but coming. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun melt into orange along the tops of the trees. My house, the one I built, repaired, loved, glowed in that warm light. The brick looked strong. The yard looked settled. The place felt alive with memory. This was the home where I rocked Derek to sleep after his nightmares. The home where I held Renee's hand after her sister passed. The home where birthdays were celebrated, tears were shared, and holidays turned into long nights of laughter. And yet, inside those walls, something was happening behind my back. Something planned. Something hidden. Something involving my future. I didn't know what it was yet, not fully. But I knew this, I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't old enough to miss the signs. I wasn't confused. I was paying attention. And for the first time in a long while, I realized I might need to. Suspicion doesn't scream, It whispers. It waits. It hides in the small things you would normally overlook. I had lived long enough to know the difference between a harmless change and a quiet shift in how people treat you. What I didn't know was just how many signs had been sitting right in front of me long before that night on the stairs. 2 days after overhearing Renee and Derek talking, I went looking for the electric bill. Not because I needed to pay it, Renee had handled that for years, but because I wanted to see it. I couldn't say why. I just felt a pull in my gut telling me to check something for myself. The drawer where we kept the monthly statements was unusually empty. Not just tidied, but cleared out. I ran my hand along the bottom, checking behind the folders. Nothing. Renee walked into the room right as I closed the drawer. "What are you looking for?" she asked. "Electric bill," I said. "Oh, I already handled that one." She smiled, tapping the edge of her phone. "Online. Much easier." It was such a normal answer that I almost let it go. Almost. But her voice held that same softness she used at the doctor's office. The kind used for children or for people who you don't trust to understand what's being said. I nodded, but my mind stayed restless. Later that afternoon, Derek stopped by again. He said he was checking in, but he went straight to the hallway closet and pulled out a toolbox. "Light in your bathroom's been flickering," he said. "Thought I'd fix it." He hadn't been upstairs to see any flickering. And he didn't ask if I'd noticed it. I followed him up the stairs, slowly, listening to the house creak beneath our feet. In the bathroom, he unscrewed the light cover and replaced a perfectly good bulb. "There," he said. "Much safer." "Derek," I said quietly. "You don't need to check on things every day." "I'm okay." He paused with his back to me, shoulders stiff. "I know, Dad. I just want to make sure you're all right." But he didn't sound convinced. He sounded rehearsed. That night, I sat in my recliner, letting the weight of the day settle into my bones. I watched Renee move around the kitchen with tight movements, more rushed than usual, as if she was trying to finish something before I noticed. I thought about speaking up. Thought about saying, "I heard you." But I wasn't ready, not without understanding the whole picture. The next morning, I got my answer to one piece of that mystery. A letter arrived from the bank. It was addressed to me, but Renee's handwriting was on the corner of the envelope, like she had already marked it as hers to handle later. I picked it up before she could see me do it and brought it inside to my recliner. The envelope felt thick. Important. I opened it carefully. Inside was a monthly statement for something I didn't recognize. Home equity line of credit, $2,700 payment received. I sat there staring at those words, my thumb shaking slightly against the paper. Home equity? Credit? Payment? I had not taken out a loan. Not in months. Not in years. I read down the page, seeing unfamiliar numbers, a balance I didn't understand, and transaction dates from a week I barely remembered, the week of my mini-stroke. My breath grew shallow. My heart thumped steady but heavy. Renee walked in suddenly. I lowered the paper, just slightly. "What's that?" she asked. "Bank statement," I said. "For something I don't know about." Her face tightened, but only for half a second. Then she put on the same soft, patient smile. "Oh, Henry, that's just the leftover balance from that maintenance loan you forgot about. For the roof." I shook my head. "Roof was paid off 5 years ago." She didn't blink. "Yes, but the insurance, we talked about this." "You must have forgotten." I watched her mouth move, listened to the calm tone she used, and realized she had already prepared this explanation. She had a story ready for me because she knew I would eventually ask. And Derek had been checking the house not because he cared about safety, but because he wanted to make sure I seemed forgetful if I brought anything up. That night, I checked the mailbox again after sunset. A man my age has a right to check his own mail. Inside, buried between flyers and junk, was another envelope addressed to me, this one from the county clerk's office. I brought it inside, waited until Renee went up to run her bath, and opened it in the quiet of my bedroom. It was a notification acknowledging a change of authorized contact on my property tax account. The new name listed was Derek Cole. My own son had listed himself as the primary contact for my home, without my knowledge. My chest tightened. Not pain and fear. Not for my health, but for what else I might find. The next morning, I went to look for my passport and social security card, both kept in the small lockbox in my closet. The box had been moved. Not far, just enough that I knew it hadn't been me. Inside, everything looked normal, but the folder holding our financial papers felt thinner than before. Something was missing. I couldn't tell what, but I felt the gap like a hollow space in my stomach. Around noon, I sat on the porch again. I held my cane loosely in one hand, breathing in the warm air. Renee came out behind me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." Her hand stayed on my shoulder a moment too long, as if she was trying to reassure herself of something. Then she went back inside. And that's when something settled in me, a quiet heaviness, not anger yet, but a steady understanding. I was being handled. Monitored. Guided toward a future I did not choose. They were building a case around me, a calm narrative of decline. A small slip here, a misplaced paper there, a moment of confusion they could point to. Not enough for anyone to call abuse. But enough to question me if I ever said, "That's not my signature." When I went to bed that night, I kept the bank statement under my pillow. It wasn't much. It wasn't proof. But it was the first piece of something real. The first sign that this wasn't care. This wasn't concern. This wasn't love expressed clumsily. This was preparation. Paperwork. Positioning. And if I didn't start paying close attention, I was going to lose everything I had built. There's a kind of pain that doesn't make you cry or shout. It just sits in your chest like a stone, heavy enough to change the way you breathe. That was the feeling I carried with me the morning I finally decided to go to the bank. I didn't tell Renee where I was going. She asked, of course. "You heading out? Need me to drive you?" "No," I said. "I'm just going for a walk." She studied me a moment too long. Her eyes narrowed just slightly before she softened them again, another practiced expression. The kind you wear when you're trying to manage someone. I grabbed my cane, my hat, and stepped outside. The walk to the bus stop was slow, but I took my time. I looked at every house on my street, every yard, every face of the neighborhood I'd been part of for more than 40 years. I didn't know what I'd find at the bank, but I knew one thing: I couldn't keep guessing. A man should know his own business, especially when someone else is trying to get inside it. The city bus rumbled up, and I stepped on. The driver recognized me immediately. "Morning, Mr. Cole," he said. "Haven't seen you in a bit." "Just running errands today," I replied. He nodded, and I moved to a seat near the front, steadying myself with the metal rail. As the bus rolled through Charlotte, I watched the city pass by, a place that had changed so much over the years, yet still held pieces of the life I built. I thought about Derek as the bus hummed along. My boy had been raised better than this. I wasn't a perfect father, but I was present. I showed up. I provided. I taught him about responsibility and respect. Now he was trying to move me out of my own house like a man too worn out to speak up for himself. And Renee. I thought she loved me. Maybe she did once. Or maybe she only loved the stability I brought her after her sister died. The security. The house. The routine. Whatever the truth was, I told myself not to assume too much until I saw the facts. The bus pulled up to my stop. I stepped down carefully and made my way down the sidewalk to the bank, a familiar brick building with a freshly painted sign and glass doors that reflected the late morning sun. Inside, the air was cool, the kind that carries the quiet seriousness of money and paperwork. A woman behind the counter, Ms. Jordan, looked up with a kind smile. "Good morning, Mr. Cole." How can I help you today? I'd known her for years. She always spoke to me with respect, not that slow pitying tone some younger folks use. I need to check on something, I said. Something about a loan I don't remember taking. Her smile faded into concern. Come with me. She led me to her office, a small room with stacks of organized folders, a computer screen glowing with blue light, and a framed picture of her 2 kids on the desk. What kind of loan? She asked gently. A home equity line of credit, I said. Got a statement in the mail that didn't make sense. She nodded, typing quickly. Her fingers paused on the keyboard, and her eyebrows lifted. Yes, I see it. There's an active line of credit tied to your property. Opened about 4 months ago. 4 months ago. The week I'd had the mini-stroke. The week Derek stayed at the house helping Renee while I was in the hospital. Can you show me the paperwork? I asked. Of course. She clicked a few more buttons, then turned the screen slightly toward me. And there it was. My name. My address. My social security number. My signature. But it wasn't mine. Not the way my hand writes. The letters were shaky, uneven in a way that mimicked the tremor I'd had after the stroke. They thought of everything. Even how my handwriting looked when I was weak. Below my forged signature sat Renee's, smooth, steady, and Derek's name listed as an authorized contact. A quiet ringing filled my ears. For a moment, the office seemed to tilt, and I gripped my cane harder to steady myself. Mr. Cole? Ms. Jordan asked, voice low. Do you recall signing these documents? No, I said. My voice was barely above a whisper. I was in the hospital that week. She frowned, moved the mouse, clicked to another document. There was a power of attorney submitted as well. It allows your son to act on your behalf. My throat tightened. Power of attorney? She nodded. Yes. It says you granted Derek permission to manage financial decisions while you were recovering. I shook my head slowly. I never signed anything like that. Ms. Jordan leaned back in her chair, concern deepening. Mr. Cole, then this might be fraud. That word cut me deeper than anything. Fraud. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mix-up. Not a paperwork error. Fraud. I'm going to print these for you, she said. And we'll need to file an internal report. She printed the documents, copies of signatures, dates, contact changes, and approval stamps. She placed them carefully in a folder and slid it toward me. As I reached out to take it, my hand shook, not from age, but from anger and disbelief. They did this while I was in the hospital, I said quietly. While I was lying in a bed with machines checking if I'd make it through the night. Ms. Jordan's eyes softened. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. Truly. But you're doing the right thing by coming in. I nodded, though my chest felt heavy. Leaving the bank, I walked down the street slowly, folder tucked under my arm. The sun seemed too bright. The noise of cars too loud. The world too normal for the kind of betrayal I now held in my hands. I took a bench near the bus stop and opened the folder again. Every page confirmed the same truth. They weren't planning to move me into assisted living for my safety. They were planning to move me because I was in the way. The house wasn't just a home to them. It was leverage. A source of money. A stepping stone they thought they had the right to take. I closed the folder and stared out at the street. Couples walking by. Workers unloading a truck. Teenagers laughing as they passed. Life kept moving, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. I thought about going home and confronting them right then. My heart beat hard at the thought of standing in that kitchen, holding up those papers, demanding an explanation. But then I pictured the lies they would tell. The excuses. The rehearsed concern. The gentle voices trying to paint me as confused. No. I needed to be smarter than that. A bus pulled up, and I stepped on. As it rolled through the city, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to protect myself quietly. And to do that, I needed help from someone who had never once looked at me like I was a burden. When I stepped off the bus, I didn't walk home. I walked straight to my niece Tanya's house. Tanya opened the door with surprise on her face. "Uncle Henry? You okay?" "Not really," I said. "I need to talk to you." The concern in her expression wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't forced. It was real. She opened the door wider. "Come in." I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and set the folder on her kitchen table. "Tanya," I said quietly, "I need you to look at something. And I need you to listen close." She sat across from me, serious now, leaning forward. I opened the folder. And as her eyes scanned the documents, the truth of what my wife and my son had done unfolded in silence. When she finally looked up, her voice was tight, controlled. "Uncle Henry, this is fraud. This is illegal. They can't do this to you." I swallowed, feeling the weight of it settle deeper. "They already did." Tanya sat back, jaw clenched. Then she nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Okay," she said. "Then we're going to fix this. And we're going to do it right." And for the first time since that night on the stairs, I felt something steady inside me again. Not anger. Not fear. Strength. Quiet strength. The kind that comes from knowing the truth and finally having someone on your side to face it with you. Tanya didn't waste time. She sat there with her elbows on the table, eyes locked on the papers like she was preparing for a trial. I'd watched her grow up from a shy little girl into a woman who could walk into any room and speak with authority. In that moment, she wasn't my niece, she was the one person standing between me and losing everything. "Uncle Henry," she said, voice steady, "you can't stay quiet about this." "Not anymore." "I know," I said softly. "But if I go home waving these papers, they'll twist it. They'll say I'm confused or didn't remember signing anything." Tanya nodded. "That's why we're going to do this the right way. Step by step. We protect you first, then we expose everything." She stood up, grabbed her phone, and started typing. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "A lawyer. One of the attorneys I work with for elder abuse cases. You can trust him." Her fingers moved faster. Then she hit send. "He can see us today," she said. My eyebrows lifted. That fast? Tanya grabbed her keys. "Let's go." We drove across town to a small law office tucked between a bakery and a laundromat. The sign above the door read Alvarez and Co., attorneys at law. Nothing fancy. Just a clean, honest-looking place. Inside, the air smelled like old books and coffee. A secretary greeted us, then led us to a small conference room where Mr. Alvarez entered a moment later. He was a tall man with silvering hair and warm eyes that held attention without force. "Tanya," he said, shaking her hand. Then he turned to me. "Mr. Cole, I've heard good things about you." "I wish I'd come under better circumstances," I said. He nodded. "Let's take a look." I handed him the folder. He took his time, reading every line, every signature, every date. He didn't ask questions until he had gone through all of it twice. When he finally closed the folder, he let out a quiet breath. "Mr. Cole," he said, "this is serious. What your wife and son did, if these signatures are forged, and that power of attorney is fraudulent, this isn't just unethical. It's criminal." I nodded slowly. Hearing it out loud made everything more real. "I need to ask you something," he continued. "How is your mental clarity? Do you feel sharp? Do you understand everything that's been happening?" "Yes," I said plainly. "I know exactly what I'm saying, and I know what they did." He watched me for a moment, judging not my words but my steadiness. Then he nodded again. "Good. That's important. They're clearly positioning you as incapable. We need to move fast to stop them from doing more damage. He pulled out a legal pad and began outlining steps. First, we revoke every version of power of attorney. You sign new documents giving authority to someone you trust, Tanya, for example. I nodded. Tanya looked humbled but determined. Second, he said, we secure your assets. Freeze any active credit lines. Notify the bank of potential fraud so they flag your accounts. Third, you get a formal cognitive assessment. Not because I doubt you, but because we need a medical record to shut down their narrative. I took a slow breath. What about the house title? We'll protect that too, he said. Eventually, we may need to put it in a trust. But not yet. One step at a time. He looked up from his notes. And lastly, you do not confront them. Not until we have everything in place. I felt a quiet relief settle over me. I wasn't planning to. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Good, he said. Because right now, the most dangerous thing you could do is tip them off. We spent 2 hours going through the details. I signed new legal documents. Tanya signed as my trusted agent. Mr. Alvarez filed the revocation forms electronically. Before we left, he said something that landed deep. Mr. Cole, families sometimes hide behind the word care. But you deserve more than excuses. You deserve respect. Everything we do from here will ensure you get it. When Tanya drove me home, I felt tired, not from age, but from the weight of the day. But underneath the exhaustion was something steadier. A kind of grounded strength I hadn't felt in a long time. When we reached my house, Tanya didn't pull into the driveway. You shouldn't be alone in there tonight, she said gently. I need to be there, I told her. If I stay away, they'll know something's wrong. She didn't like the answer, but she respected it. She leaned over and squeezed my hand. Call me the moment anything happens. I will. I stepped out and walked toward my front door. Inside, Renee was wiping down the counters, humming a tune she always sang when she was trying to calm herself. Derek wasn't around. The house felt too quiet. You were gone a long time, she said, not looking up. Just running errands, I replied. She nodded, but her shoulders stiffened, like she felt something was changing and couldn't name it yet. I went upstairs, sat at the edge of the bed, and opened the folder again. I took each paper out one by one, reading them slowly until the ink felt burned into my mind. That night, sleep didn't come easy. My body was tired, but my thoughts kept replaying everything. The forged signature. The power of attorney. Derek's name as the contact. Renee's voice whispering about the house. But something else kept replaying too. Tanya's voice saying, "We're going to fix this." The next morning, I began gathering my own quiet evidence. I started by watching how Renee handled the mail. She always took it first, sorting it quickly, slipping some envelopes into her purse. I let her do it. I pretended not to notice. But I paid attention to which envelopes never made it back out of that purse. Later, I checked the drawers in the study. Certain files were thinner. Certain folders had new labels. I didn't touch anything, I just memorized what was missing. I watched how Derek spoke to me, too. Every time he exaggerated a small mistake, every time he repeated something I already understood, every time he tried to help without me asking, I made mental notes. They were building a story. I was building mine. That afternoon, I went to get my blood pressure checked at the clinic. The nurse who knew me well said, "You seem more stressed than usual." I said, "I got a lot on my mind. But I'm working on it." She smiled. "Good. You're sharper than most men your age." Her words settled over me like a quiet piece of confirmation. Before going home, I stopped by the bank, this time without entering. I stood outside, watching people go in and out. I thought about how easily my family had tried to erase my voice by using my age as an excuse. Not today. Not anymore. Before leaving, I called Tanya. "I'm ready," I said. Ready for what? To let them show themselves. We talked for a few minutes, and she agreed with Mr. Alvarez. Everything needed to unfold in front of witnesses. A controlled environment. Neutral ground. A place where the truth would speak louder than excuses. Mr. Alvarez called later that evening. Mr. Cole, I've arranged a meeting at the bank. Everyone will be there. You, me, your wife, your son, and the branch manager. They think it's a routine clarification meeting. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want them to think. He paused, and his voice softened. You're doing the right thing. And you're not alone in this. I hung up, feeling a steadiness settle into my hands, my breath, my bones. This wasn't rage. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. And for a 72-year-old man, there are few things more powerful than finally seeing the truth and choosing to stand firm in it. The day of the meeting arrived with a coldness that didn't match the weather. The sun was bright, the sky clear, but inside my chest everything felt still and heavy. Not dread, not fear, just a firm understanding that what was about to happen needed to happen. There was no turning back. Tanya picked me up that morning. When I stepped out onto the porch, she was already waiting beside her car, arms crossed, jaw set. She didn't smile when she saw me, not out of coldness, but because she respected the seriousness of what we were walking into. You ready, Uncle? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. Let's go. The ride was quiet. We didn't need to talk, the air between us already understood everything. When we arrived, the bank parking lot was half full, early morning customers coming and going. I held my cane steady as we walked together toward the glass doors. Tanya stayed close, but not in a way that suggested I needed help, more in a way that said she had my back. Inside, the cool air hit my face, and Ms. Jordan waved from behind her counter. Good morning, Mr. Cole. They're expecting you. She led us to one of the small conference rooms in the back. The blinds were open, sunlight pouring across the table. And there they were. Renee. Derek. Sitting side by side like they were about to negotiate a business deal. Renee wore a neat blazer over a cream blouse, her hair styled carefully. Derek had on his office clothes, button-down shirt, tie slightly loose, trying to look composed. But their faces told the truth. They weren't expecting a collapse today, only a little clarification. They didn't know Tanya and Mr. Alvarez were part of this. Renee spoke first. Henry, what is all this about? You could have just talked to us at home. Her tone was sweet. Too sweet. The tone people use when they're worried about what you know. Before I could answer, Mr. Alvarez walked in behind us, greeting the room. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Let's get started. Everyone sat. I took my seat slowly, letting the cane settle by my side. Tanya sat next to me, hands folded, eyes steady and alert. Ms. Jordan brought in a folder of documents and placed them in the middle of the table. Mr. Alvarez began calmly. We're here to review the home equity line of credit tied to Mr. Cole's property. There are inconsistencies that need clarification. Renee's smile froze. Derek's foot started tapping. Now, before we discuss details, Mr. Alvarez continued, I want to confirm something with you, Henry. Did you sign the documents that opened this line of credit? He looked at me with full confidence. Not leading me. Not speaking for me. Just giving me space to speak. I looked directly at Renee. Then at Derek. I did not, I said clearly. I was in the hospital that week. Derek leaned forward. Dad, we talked about this. You must have forgotten. No, I said. I remember exactly where I was. Silence. Then Mr. Alvarez turned to Ms. Jordan. Would you show us the documents? She opened the folder and laid out the scanned forms across the table, signatures, dates, power of attorney, everything. Renee glanced at them, then forced a soft laugh. This is all a misunderstanding. Mr. Alvarez didn't blink. Mrs. Cole, this is a legally binding financial agreement. Misunderstandings don't explain forged signatures. Derek stiffened. We didn't forge anything. Dad said we could handle things while he was recovering. I kept my eyes on him. Son, I never told you to sign for me. His jaw clenched. You don't remember, okay? You were confused. Those words settled into the room like dust. Ms. Jordan leaned forward, hands folded neatly. Mr. Cole has undergone a cognitive assessment. His doctor confirmed he is fully capable of making his own decisions. Renee's face drained of color. Mr. Alvarez continued, voice even. Additionally, Mr. Cole has revoked all previous powers of attorney and assigned new representation. Tanya's presence beside me grew more solid, more grounded. Renee blinked fast. Henry, why would you do that? We've always taken care of you. I shook my head. You weren't taking care of me. You were taking control. Before she could respond, Mr. Alvarez slid another document to the center of the table. This is the revocation notice. Effective immediately, neither of you has legal authority to act on Mr. Cole's behalf. Derek's eyes widened. Dad, you can't do this. We were trying to help you. I leaned forward slightly, my voice steady. Help me? You tried to move me into assisted living without telling me. You took my mail. You changed the contact on my property taxes. You opened a credit line using my name while I was in a hospital bed. Renee swallowed hard, her throat tightening visibly. We thought it was best. You thought it was convenient, I said. The silence that followed was long, heavy, and full of the truth they could no longer outrun. Then Ms. Jordan spoke softly but firmly. As of today, the line of credit is frozen pending a fraud investigation. Any further activity will require Mr. Cole's in-person authorization. Renee covered her mouth with her hand. Derek leaned back in his chair, eyes darting, searching for a way out. Mr. Alvarez finished it cleanly. There may also be legal consequences depending on the findings. For now, Mr. Cole's assets are protected, and all parties are notified. There it was, the shift. The moment the room stopped believing their version and started seeing mine. Renee whispered, Henry, please. Let's talk at home. No, I said. I'm done talking behind closed doors. Derek tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. Dad, you're making things worse. No, I said, meeting his eyes. I'm making things clear. When the meeting ended, Renee stayed seated, staring down at the table. Derek stormed out first, jaw tight, hands clenched. He didn't look at me. Renee finally rose to her feet and walked slowly toward me. Henry, she said quietly, you should have trusted me. I did, I replied. For too long. Her face twisted, part guilt, part fear, part something I didn't recognize anymore. She walked out without another word. Tanya helped me up, her hand warm on my shoulder. You did good, she said. You held your ground. I wasn't angry, I said. Just done. Together, we stepped out into the sunlight. The air felt different, lighter, honest. Like I could finally breathe again. When Tanya dropped me back home after the meeting, the house felt different. Not quieter, just honest. The kind of honesty that comes when all the pretending finally breaks and you're left standing in the truth, even if it hurts. Renee wasn't there when I walked inside. Her pocketbook was gone from its usual spot by the entryway. The shoes she always kicked off near the rug weren't there either. For the first time in a long while, I felt the space around me breathe. I hung my hat on the hook, set my cane by the chair, and sat down slowly. The cushions shaped themselves around me the way they always did, carrying years of memory, not just of me, but of every person who had once sat beside me with real love. The afternoon sun spilled through the window, warming my hands. I let the silence settle, not as a weight, but as a comfort. I wasn't confused. I wasn't weak. I wasn't slipping. I was still me. After a long while, I stood up and walked to the kitchen. The mail was sitting on the counter, a small stack, neat, untouched. For the first time in months, it was all addressed to me. Nothing was missing. Nothing was hidden. I opened each envelope carefully, reading slowly, taking note of every line. My bills. My statements. My business. The way it always should have been. Later that evening, Tanya came by with groceries. She wasn't fussing over me, she was giving me space to choose. You want company? She asked. Not tonight, I said. But sit with me a minute. We sat on the porch, watching the sky turn orange and then fade into deep blue. I'm proud of you, Uncle, she said. Most people your age would have gotten scared and backed down. I wasn't scared, I said. Just disappointed. That's a different kind of pain. She nodded, understanding exactly what I meant. Do you want Renee to come back? She asked gently. I took a slow breath. I want peace in my home. That's all. Tanya nodded. She didn't press for more. She never did. The next morning, I made a choice. I called Mr. Alvarez and told him I was ready to move forward with protecting everything fully, the house title, my medical directives, my will. We set up the trust for the home, with Tanya listed as successor trustee. No one could touch it now. Not without going through legal fire. When I hung up, I felt something shift inside me, not triumph, not revenge. Something quieter. A sense of safety I hadn't felt in years. A few days passed before Renee came by to pick up her things. She didn't knock, she used her key and stepped inside with a cautious slowness. Henry, she called out. I walked into the hallway. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged, but her voice was composed. I'll be staying with my sister for a while. Just until things settle. I nodded. That's best. She looked at me for a long moment. Not angry. Not defiant. Just defeated. The kind of defeated that comes from finally facing your own choices. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. I know, I replied. But you still did. She nodded, once, quickly. No excuses. No more stories. She gathered the last of her bags and left the house gently, closing the door behind her. When the latch clicked, it sounded final. Clean. Not hateful, just necessary. The days that followed were slow but peaceful. I got back into my routines. Coffee on the porch. Short walks down the block. Sundays at church where Pastor Green squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're stronger than you look, Henry." Neighbors asked how I was doing, and I answered honestly. I'm all right. One day at a time. Some evenings, when the house got too quiet, I felt the ache of everything I lost, not just people, but trust, history, the version of my life I thought I'd have in my older years. But with that ache came clarity. I wasn't stripped of my dignity. I wasn't emptied of purpose. I wasn't alone. Tanya came by often, sitting with me, sharing meals, reminding me that family isn't defined by blood alone, it's defined by who stands with you when your world is shaking. One night, as we sat watching the streetlights flicker on, she said something that stayed with me. You didn't just save your house, Uncle Henry. You saved your voice. And she was right. For months, people talked around me. Planned around me. Decided around me. But I found my voice again. Not by shouting. Not by fighting. By being steady. By being clear. By refusing to let anyone rewrite who I was. I sit on my porch most evenings now, watching the neighborhood settle the way it always has. Kids finishing their games before supper. Couples walking their dogs. Old friends waving as they pass. Life didn't stop because mine shook. It kept going, and it reminded me that I could keep going too. I think a lot about the night I stood at the top of those stairs, listening to the two people I trusted most whisper about my future like it was a burden they needed to get rid of. I think about how easy it would have been for me to stay quiet, to pretend I didn't hear anything, to let them move me like a piece of furniture. But silence doesn't protect you. And age doesn't mean you stop fighting for your life. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Pay attention to the small things. Ask questions, even when it feels uncomfortable. And never let anyone convince you that getting older means you stop having a say in your own life. I didn't choose betrayal, but I chose how I responded to it. I chose to stand firm, to speak when I needed to gather proof, to protect my name, and to hold on to my dignity even when it felt like the ground under me was shifting. You deserve that same strength. You deserve respect. You deserve a life that belongs to you and no one else. Now, let me ask you something, and answer this honestly. If you heard the people closest to you planning your future without you, would you stay quiet, or would you stand up the way I did? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if my story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your own family battles or gave you courage you didn't know you still had, go on and subscribe. I've got more truth to share, and I want you with me for every step of it. Thank you for listening.